Hey everyone, it's Christopher Swan, and welcome to this week's episode of Living Your Journey. So each week I have this amazing opportunity to chat with people that love what they do in life. They understand their passions and their direction. Maybe it's a career path, or it's the social impact that they're making. It's kind of like they're following their North Star, but they know their story may change, and they understand that they're on their journey every day. On the show this week is Paul Ziegfeld. Michael's an actor, a producer, and an author, but these titles don't really do him justice because he's done a lot of great work in so many different spaces. And the variety of experiences has really added to his perspectives, and that is what he shares on the show. I really wanted to chat with Michael because he has this brilliant way of looking at his life, realizing how success is not what we think it is. Sure, he's done a ton of movies, TV, stage shows, and you name it. But he has this story of being fed up with his reality and ready to retire, and this is when things get extra interesting. Michael shares why writing a book triggered him to see life in a different way, and how the book is transformed into a panel discussions to share tangible advice to others, bringing further purpose to Michael's life. So in our conversation, he shares the entertainment world and his new experiences. Michael's thoughtful, funny, and I had a ton of fun getting to know him. Everyone, meet Michael. Michael, it's great to have you on the show today. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting.
Oh, likewise. So, okay, let me just start with this. It's going to be long-winded, but I really started to think about this as we talked earlier and when we even talked a little while ago. So, when I initially heard your background, I knew your story was like different than mine. Obviously, you're an actor, you're a writer, you puppeteering. I mean, the list goes on. What's really interesting, and the more that we talk, the more I realize that, yeah, our experiences are different, but we really have I feel like we have so much in common because of how you've kind of realized what your path means, what success means, and like what happiness means. So, I just wanted to put that out there at first because even we can live in completely different worlds, but I listened to you over the last couple of weeks and I thought, gosh, he gets it. Like he totally gets it. So anyways, I just wanted to say that first of all, that I think your story transcends so much more.
Well, thanks. I think that, everyone is relatable no matter what they do because it can all be, manifested and presented and you can participate with the same tools of life. So, I think that, working in entertainment as opposed to corporate America, we all have the same concerns. We all have the same way we try to start working in the world about, persona or ego or fear or whatever that is. So, and really, you're very nice in saying that. What you recognize, I really only fully discovered like 2 years ago, and I'm 45.
I love that though, because we're about the same age. So,
yeah. But who's older? Who's older?
Do you really want to know that?
Yeah. Oh, damn. All right. No, I don't want to know.
It actually makes me feel happy though, because I'm usually the old one in the room. So
I know. Terrible.
We're so close though. So just so you know.
Okay.
I'm 44. So see.
That's fine. Why do you look better than me?
Because I have Photoshop.
Oh. Okay.
No, that's not true. So, okay. So before we get into this, because here's what I really want to dig into, because I think this is what's going to be, I find it really interesting, and I think some of our listeners will enjoy it as well. Just kind of, where you're at today and the things that you're doing. But before we get to that route, I want to back up a little bit, and I want to talk about your past experience. So obviously you've been in entertainment for a long time, and there's something that stuck in my mind a little bit. And I just want to start. I don't want to go like the whole path of like beginning to end, but there is a beginning of your career that I think is a fun, fascinating story. You talked about like this like self-guided tour you gave yourself in the studio. So if you could just maybe even just tell us like how you got into entertainment and maybe about that story.
Sure. So like most people who want to be in entertainment, they always have the same story about when they were kids and there was a family party and you'd put on a little show for the family and things like that. And I always really was very drawn to all that, even the technical side, not just performance. And I lived in Philadelphia. At the time, Philadelphia was the fourth largest market for television. So all the network shows from New York would be tested in Philly. So I was in the studio audience of a morning talk show that was hosted by Jerry Pennicoli, who's on Access Extra now, I think. And it was called People Are Talking, and it was, a regular talk show with guests. And at the end of the show, when they were filing all the guests out of the studio to the lobby, I took a left turn, I stepped into an elevator, and I gave myself a tour of the station. So when someone stopped me, they're like, "Can I help you?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm just here for," and then I pulled the name from the rolling credits from the show. So from that, I met the head of programming, and she liked me so much. She had my parents call her, and they gave me an internship, and I was the youngest intern ever at NBC after that.
There's so many reasons I love this, but I just love how
I'm sorry. I should also mention that I really hated school at the time. So normally in high school, you're allowed to do the work study program when you're a junior or senior, but usually they go to like Voc Tech or something. But this was much earlier, and they allowed me to utilize that program.
Yeah, that's so great. Okay, here's the big thing I really loved about this is, like, how brave were you as this kid? Like, you were just super bold, and like, I think you were kind of hustling before like that term became like a hashtag on Twitter, right? Like,
right. Oh, I mean, I was scared. I was nervous about being caught, but I was so curious. I was fascinated by the whole thing.
Well, of course you were scared, but I love it. You're like, oh yeah, and I'm here to see this person. Like, you were scared, but you were so fly on your feet. I love that. That's
right. I'm a liar, basically. I was a liar.
Yeah, but you're a really good one. So, right. I mean, there's points for that. So this is why I wanted you to tell that, because I just thought it was fun. But I also think I want to sum you up, but that sums up a lot of kind of like how you attack things, it seems like, throughout your career over this like length of time in Hollywood. Like, you were like, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. Because when I started to look through everything that you've done and just look at the different shows and the movies and the, down to the puppets and just all that stuff, I just think, not everybody could just do that. Not everybody just tries. They think they're going to fail. And maybe you have all that. But I really liked that you just did it. Was that inherent for you, or like what was like fueling that?
Well, I think that, I had siblings, and my parents were not going to drop everything and take me to New York every time a call came in. And I had to make it happen on my own. I mean, my mother was great. She drove me to the studio, every day, and when she could, or I take the bus. But I think that it's funny because I would sit in front of the TV and watch Sesame Street, and I was actually worried that by the time I was old enough to drive and get to New York, the show would be off the air and I would miss my chance. I mean, I was already upset. First of all, I'm Jewish, so I was already worrying at like age 7. It's cultural. But yeah, I don't know. It was the fear of missing out. I was so ready to do it. I mean, school was so boring to me. I just wanted to go out and do it already. Yeah.
Well, I love that you were even thinking of it at that point, but I like that, how you just wanted to do it. You wanted to participate. Okay, well, let's jump into, clearly we can't go through all, I think it's like 25 plus years of you working in the industry and such.
Yeah.
But I'd love to know too, like, maybe a couple things. Were there a couple highlights? And also, like, what kept you going through this, like, I kind of look at it as, and we'll talk about this, but like this kind of amazing ebb and flows of experiences.
Mm-hmm. Well, the truth is, I would say towards the end of high school, my parents divorced, and it was very messy, and there were money problems, and I was kind of on my own, pretty young. And high school was such a challenging social experience for me. I really just wanted to get out into the world. So, plus there wasn't really money for college. So it started out as kind of, working out of panic. It had to get done. And also, but then, there were so many things I wanted to try, and I hadn't really gone to school for anything where everyone else had. I think over the next couple of years, every time an opportunity came, I took it. And all of those opportunities were very different. So, I started out in theater and, TV production, and then I got to be on air. And then that internship ended, and I had to get a job at a theater, and I was a technician, and I learned how to do that for 3 years. And then I met all the comedy acts, and I started doing it. So over and over and over the years, I had many different jobs. And, in the end, I thought that was my problem. People look at your resume and they say, well, great, but what do you do? And I forever felt like I was faking it till I made it. and I was surviving as opposed to living. Like I could never really appreciate an accomplishment because, I still had to pay my bills. I didn't know what was going to come next. And I was afraid to rest on my laurels. So I really wasn't, I was hustling, and the ego of the jobs was, telling me that I was doing okay. And of course, entertainment and even corporate America, it's all about PRing yourself and being someone that is in demand. But I never really felt legitimate in my abilities or what I had done until much later, when I realized that I just ran myself into the ground, and I couldn't pat myself on the back at all. So, but that went on for 20 years. And the highlights were, and there were some great things as I look back. I was one of the only white acts to open for James Brown. I had the majority of my career has been I have a comedy, a stand-up ventriloquist variety act, and that brought me to Las Vegas, and I toured with a lot of names, and it got me on TV a few times, and that kind of branched off into all the other things I wanted to do. I had a voiceover career, animation and things like that. I did a few movies, and it was basically just my show business creative checklist. I do everything, the things I wanted to do, and I'd move on to the next thing. Writing I want to do that. Write a joke for a TV show, or eventually I'd consult on a movie, or then it turned into directing. So, but again, nowadays everyone does have to do everything, and I used to think that, that I wasn't talented. All of my friends were doing amazing things, like one amazing thing that they worked on for 20 years, and I thought that I didn't have that. And I thought that I wasn't good enough at any one thing, that it would skyrocket me into, an amazing career. But I realized that I now like that palette. I like knowing a little bit about everything. And that really has turned me into a really good producer and a director, because I understand the front and the back of the work, the budgeting and the crew and the talent and all of that. So I don't vilify it anymore. I mean, it's not always easy financially, but that's working for yourself. Sometimes you're making a lot, and sometimes you're making nothing.
Yeah, it's really true. And I actually think it's funny that you talk about this. You weren't really great at this one thing, or we weren't in something for like 20 years. You were almost actually ahead of the game, though, because you're right. Like today, you kind of need to know it all, especially with entertainment that's now via the internet, where all these, folks are producing, writing, doing their own thing. So it's hindsight. You can look back and go, gosh, actually, this is really great, and look at where I'm at. And I think the other thing you said there, maybe because you say this and I really like it, because I kind of feel similar in some aspects. I'm like, yeah, I've done this and I've done this. You can pull it all together and think of how well-rounded you are. And if you didn't have those experiences, you wouldn't be able to do what you're doing today.
Right. And when people ask me what I do, like, it's too long of a story. I just tell them I'm a plumber or something. And but one of the reasons I liked your website was as far as talking about legitimacy and how you're connecting with other people. I made an error early on. I was around 19, where I kind of, as my way up the ladder, I kind of made a poor choice, and I did not treat someone well. Now, I had made restitution to that for 20 years. From that point forward, I made it my goal to make sure the choices I made were, with ethics and kindness and character, but also, having a business mindset attached to it, and also making sure that anything that I had an icky feeling in my stomach about, that I would rectify immediately. Fortunately, I learned that lesson early. But again, only in recent years, I went into my midlife crisis, which I'm sure you're going to want to talk about. And part of that was the lack of feeling legitimate. I had to go back to people that I thought I had unfinished business with, and really do the next part of my life with a clean slate. And most of those people that I found, and there was only like 2 or 3, I wrote them really long letters. It's almost like you're in AA or something like that. But I wrote them really long letters about what they did for me, and I really gave it up to them. And if by chance, maybe I did or did not, if by chance I wronged them in some way or did not give them the feeling that they deserved, I let them know where I was at and that I was sorry. And I got letters back saying, we never thought that, or
wow.
We did it on purpose. We did it to help you. And then one guy said, I'm in the darkest point of my life, and your letter, was like a shining light during this time. And I just really have decided that in recent years that I'm now at the next part of my life, and I feel like most people my age are going through that how am I doing, where am I going, who am I now conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And so really and everyone always says, oh, you're so proactive in your career. I'm like, that was out of panic. That was pure panic. So now it's a little different.
I actually think, though, it's valuable. Even that panic piece, we just do it sometimes. We have to survive, and then you don't have all the answers, and you keep going. Right. It's perfect segue, actually, that you mentioned the midlife crisis. Here's the funny thing about that. I've started to realize, like, midlife crisis has such a negative connotation, probably because I think the first thing that many people think of is, oh, you're going to get a younger partner and a red sports car. Like, it's not always that. And in fact, it can be a gift once you get through all the pain in the butt stuff. But,
right. It's super uncomfortable.
Yeah. But if the result of it afterwards can be really great. So let's talk about that. I'm going to frame it up with, you originally told me it was kind of this, like, I was going to retire out of the business and there was a lot happening in life. So maybe you can jump in there and kind of color it for us and tell us why you were going to, leave the industry.
Sure. So my life had kind of gotten stuck. A lot of times in life, people have three things. They have money or love or creative, outlets. And usually you have one or two out of the three. And I realized after a certain amount of time, I had none of those things. They were all everything had stopped. And, I couldn't figure it out. I tried to unblock my life spiritually. Just in that discovery, I tried to do it physically and professionally. And nothing was working. And I was really having a tough time. I wasn't feeling good about myself, and I wasn't being fed in any way. So at the same time, my father had ALS, and which, of course, takes over your body very quickly. We put him in assisted living, and my parents are divorced, and he ended up, I'm looking at this man ending up in a little room with a paper nameplate on the door, and I lost my mind. And I'm like, I got to pull my life together. And I called the old actors home, and I'm like, hey, listen, if my life doesn't work out, am I eligible to live here? And they're like, oh, well, you're like 20 years early for this call, but yeah, maybe you should go to a therapist first,
You're just looking for reservations. That's all.
That's exactly right. And I sent it to my siblings. I'm like, hey, if my life doesn't work out, this is where I want you to put me. And they're like, you're out of your mind. So I decided, I don't want to be, old and gay and no money and alone and living with a million cats and yelling at kids to get off my lawn. First of all, I can't afford a lawn. And second of all, I'm allergic to cats. So I was worried. And so I decided that I needed to get a mainstream job. And so I went to a career coach and a resume coach to say, hey, I know I have this whole crazy career, and is this applicable in the real world? I don't have a college degree. And she assured me that it did. And after kind of, whittling through 25 years or so, we came up with two different resumes. And I took those resumes and I started taking interviews. And as I'm taking the interviews, I mean, there were things I didn't like about it, but I'm thinking, oh, that's what you people do for 8 hours a day? That's awful. How much time do you get off? That's terrible.
And this was for like corporate world, right? This was outside of the industry of entertainment?
Absolutely. It was corporate world. I'm like that, like marketing and, some production work, things like that. And I'm like, that's what you get paid? Ugh, that's awful, So what I find, and then I get a call as I'm getting ready to stop. I get a call from a publishing company who says, we hear through your blogs and this and that you are retiring, and we would like you to write a book. And I said, well, who is going to give a damn about another show business book from someone that nobody knows? And they said, well, that's kind of what we think is so interesting. You've had 5 different careers with major names and this and that, and no one knows who you are. I'm like, are you trying to hurt me?
Right.
But that is and they said, we want you to write a book. I said, well, look, if you think my career is going to help you sell books, then we shouldn't do it at all. I don't want to be responsible for someone else's failure. So they agreed to do it. And they said, we want some dirt, you need to have some celebrity stories in there, but not to get sued. And really what it did was, for the very first time, I think when you own a business, even if it's not in the arts, whatever you're passionate about, and that passion has to pay your bills, sometimes it can start poisoning the well because everything you create is manufactured now for success, and you really have no opportunity to do anything poorly or to explore. So I think that's what happened to me. And when I was asked to do this book, because I was relinquished of responsibility, it was the first thing I got to do really just for the experience, which I hadn't had since I was like 19. And it was very freeing. And the book came out, and I started getting calls. I got a call from a professor at University of Illinois. Hey, there's a whole section about how you kept, stepping on your own feet. And there's another section about how you learn to talk to people and get people to take your calls and how to disarm people. I'd like to use that for my psychology class. Do you mind if I use the book? Little calls like this. And major professional people who I did not know would write to me and tell me that I was telling their story and how honest it was, and so on and so forth, and funny at the same time. Sometimes it can be a little I don't know if I can say this on your show, but it was a little masturbatory, if you'll excuse the term. So it was great. And what I finally realized as I was going through this process and looking at new jobs, the stuff that I complained about for work and the things that I was worried about, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, how long should I keep doing this or not? It's the same bag of rocks that everyone complains about. It's just in a different wrapping. So do I want this bag of rocks or their bag of rocks? And finally, I just decided that I'm sticking with this. And that 1 foot in and 1 foot out, whether it's a job or your relationship with someone, once that's gone and you just know you're going to handle whatever comes because you're in, it really freed me up emotionally. And I was also going to start participating in a manner where, hey, I'm not climbing the ladder anymore. This is what I do. People like it. They don't. Whatever happens, fine. I'm not manipulating my surroundings anymore. I'm not micromanaging the universe. And from that, I started getting other calls. A management team wanted to represent me, and I'm like, I'm not interested. I'm not climbing the ladder. Please just talk to us for 20 minutes. We want to sell you as you. We don't want you to be someone else. We want to monetize what you do. Great. But still, to this day, if it happens, fine. If it doesn't, fine. My biggest part of my life is I wanted to make my apartment look nice so I can invite people over. For a long time, it, had nothing in it. I moved from New York, and I wasn't going to. I was here and not committing. I told myself it was minimalism, but really it looked like I was cooking meth in here. I mean, it was crazy. But now it looks great. I invite people over, and my personal life is more important. I work a little less on the road so I can have a home life. I make less money, but I'm here, and that has opened me up to other areas of production that I'm loving now. So now I don't hate doing the act anymore because it's not over magnified, that I'm not – maybe if I'm not always working where I want to work and that sort of thing. And I'm actually adding to the act now. So
sure.
This is where I'm at.
Let's go back to the book a little bit. Here's the thing I want to know. Okay, so this publisher contacts you and says, hey, all this great stuff, we want you to write it, and this is the reasons, and you're like, oh, okay. So you do it, and clearly you're writing this, your stories, and you talk about this after the book, right? And then you get these calls and these, I want to do this, and can we borrow this section and do this? During the process of writing it, did you have any, when was the ahas for you of the, oh, actually, my life is this bigger picture, not just this panic success I was aiming for? Did that happen during the writing as well?
Yeah, I think once I was willing to, when I decided I was going to quit, I cried. Because, when you're younger, you think, oh, I thought I would have gone farther. I thought I would have done better, that sort of thing. But there's other things I want in life. Like
giving up a dream almost? Kind of that feeling?
Right. Because there's other things I want. I'm halfway through my life, and I kind of felt like it was either or. I'm traveling so much. How am I going to meet someone? I've had 2 long-term relationships, but I've been single for 5 years. I'm losing my cute. What am I? I'm living in Hollywood where everyone looks like they all have abs, but they live in their car. What can I tell you? But
that's true.
Accomplishments mean nothing here. So, I was concerned. I was lonely. That kind of stuff. So, it was very painful. And then So I think when I was really ready to it's kind of like anyone in a business, when you're ready to walk away without any anger attached to it, that's when people come back to you. And that's kind of what happened. When I was ready to walk away and it was okay, and I realized, oh, I've really done enough. I've really done enough. And I can walk away now. And that made it okay. I was very peaceful. Like I said, for the first time in like 20 years, I was peaceful. It was unbelievable. And yeah, I think does that answer your question? I kind of think that's what it is.
Yeah, it is. Well, and then here's the thing that I found really interesting too, because, the book, this is totally me rolling my eyes at things, because like everybody and their brother seems to write a book these days.
Right. And by the way, can I just say one more thing?
Yeah, of course.
One of the other epiphanies I had was by letting go, I stopped having judgment about where I was or was not in my life. It was huge. And you're right. Everyone does write a book, but I will say in my favor, because it wasn't self-published, I have a little more legitimacy. I don't know if that's true or not. I just make that up. I just tell
But it sounds really good.
But you're right. Everyone has a book.
Right. And I don't at all mean to demean anybody who writes this book. It's just that I think with the internet, we see so much of that. Like, I'm a published author, I'm this, and that's so great. But the thing, this is the thing I see a lot, and because it gets to being authentic. Because about you writing this book, it's not just about the book, really. And this is why I was really gravitating toward this. Because anybody can write a book, but a lot of the ones that are out there when anybody just writes a book is about, let me tell you how to make money, let me tell you how to be successful. But yours wasn't about that. And that's what it's really, even if you got rid of the book, let's say you just wrote all this stuff yourself, it was really about this understanding who you are, this awareness where you're going. And that's what I thought was really important. And then now, what I think is so cool is, so you've got all these phone calls, and you hear people are interested in this, and you realize it's crossing industries now. Like what you said, we all have the same bag of rocks. It's just, different maybe bag. Or maybe. So this is so I think that's all great. And then I know what you've done going forward is, starting to connect to people to talk about these experiences and stories. And that's why, this other transition of like, that's why it's so cool that not only that you figured it out yourself, but now you're sharing your experiences. Can you talk a little bit about how that's, transferred from just getting some of these phone calls now to even to the breaking in roundtables and yes, how you're connecting with people?
So you're right. The book is not let me tell you about my life story, because that is a little self-serving. It was actually me outing myself, or kind of not shaming myself, but, being really honest about, my mistakes and getting in your own way. And, I think that's something that's very relatable to most people, with some humor in between. And, I also learned that it's funny in show business. I feel like the most legitimate performers are improv performers, because it's a team effort. And if you fail, everyone fails. And they have to be really open and good listening skills and all that other kind of stuff. And every improv performer I know that's successful, Christopher Guest, Jane Lynch, all those people, those characters they do on TV were characters they did in their improv. And they never looked over their shoulder to see who was watching them do their work. They did it just for the experience of the work, without adding show business into the middle of it. And so once somebody saw it, they're like, oh, I'd like to pluck that out and use it. And I think that if you can start that way in any area of industry from the beginning, without the big manipulation, there's more legitimacy to it. There's more depth, there's more layers, and you feel more confident in your work. So, because I wasted so many years, I felt, manufacturing everything instead of, not having the manipulation factor of marketing be a factor. Now, two things have evolved. One, I'm doing via Skype or in person a lot of directing for people. I'm coaching people on scripts. I'm coaching people on their performances, and whether it be actors or one-man shows. A lot of celebrities call me where they're used to doing characters, and when they do a one-person show to feel legitimate again, they can't be themselves. And so, instead of giving them lessons on how to be themselves, I really just talk to them about why they're doing this. And if they choose a song because they sound good, I throw that song out. I said you have a tremendous opportunity to be the most you, and if you're not willing to do that, then there's no point in doing this because the audience can smell disingenuous manipulation a mile away. And by the way, that's the same with any industry when you work with other people as opposed to like working in your home. So if you're working on a team or with a boss, all of that comes across. So
I have a question about a piece of that I wondered if you might have even advice to, because I love everything you just said. Yeah, really be that authentic piece, and because, like you said, people can smell it, and also you're going to love it a lot more. But here's the question I have for you. So in the beginning, if we're starting out in a career and, we want to be as authentic as we can, like really just be ourselves and do the things that we love and not get, like you said, stick show business or whatever industry you have in there. Don't make this facade of what you think what people want. Is there some advice you'd have for even like I got to pay my bills still,
Right,
and I really want to do like my art and I want to do my stuff, but like, how do I still keep and stay and be me?
right. So it's just like someone who, well, first of all, I think that even like I talk to moms, or new moms, where like the second year they're like, I don't know who I am anymore. It's about the kid all the time. My house is a mess. Yeah, I don't, all my dreams are out the window. And I always say to them, it's your job to give yourself something that feeds you and that is the most you. And that means waking up at 5 a.m. or going to bed later when you're exhausted. That's double duty. Our grandparents, the great generation, they worked a day job and a night job. They came home, had dinner, took a nap, got dressed, did a night job. And so we're a little lazy. So if you work a 9 to 5, it is you, and you have time for the gym, or you have the time for a date, then you have time to take a class or find a company. First of all, in any industry you want to break into, start locally. Get known in your local market. Get that experience there. Don't go to – everyone says to me, oh, I want to be in comedy. I'm coming to L.A. I'm like, well, don't come to L.A. Everyone's here and it's usually bad and they don't pay and, you don't get an accurate assessment, so on and so forth. So I always tell people, I'm like, well, I was just coaching a guy who works in physical fitness. And I said, well, what product do you really love? What do you love? And he told me about this product, this like foot pad thing that goes in your shoe. I'm like, so call the company and tell them you want to learn from them. You want to work with them. You want to do events for them, something like that. It's something you're excited about. It infuses into what you know and now makes your product more diverse than everybody else doing what you do. So that's what I would say. I would say even if it's, an hour a week, it breaks up your week. It gives you something to look forward to. It doesn't make your day job so tedious and over magnified, and you're really feeding yourself. But the reason people don't do that is because, well, how long is that going to take? What's that going to do for me? The truth of the matter is, from a creative side, and every human being has a creative side, whether it's computers or the arts, that is a learning process for your whole life. There is no finish line to that. So the reason everybody says it's taking too long or I'm not going to make it, there is no making it in your field because there's no finish line. And the minute you stop learning and growing in your craft, whatever that is, then it's not your craft anymore.
I love that. It's kind of like, get out of your own way, like just start and do something and learn, and also be intentional about it. Like,
right.
If you, like you said, if you're going to go on a date, do whatever, which is all good stuff. Do that too, but do what's important to you and don't get in your way of it.
Well, that's right. Participating. And that's the other thing I learned, also relearned, is to participate without the expectancy of a result, but only to participate because you want to be there.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Michael.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
It frees you.
And by the way, sometimes I'd have to write it down on a little piece of paper and stick it in my wallet because to look at it when I was getting all wound up or starting to manipulate my surroundings a little bit. I did that for years. Like in the 90s, I was doing a lot of movies and stuff like that, or I'd get a job on my good name, and then I get there and I kind of try to manipulate the PR out of it, and then I piss people off and shoot myself in the foot.
Good lesson learned. I actually write things like that down too. It's usually a post-it note and I stick it on my monitor so I can look at it when I'm there. Okay, well, let's jump back over to the roundtables. Tell me about how that everything we just talked about. Now you have the book, you have all this great information to share, kind of where you're at in your mind. But I'm curious about these roundtables because I know they're a little fresh, a little new.
Yeah, it's brand new, and it's still being developed. We've done a little tests here and there. Basically, if I wasn't doing this for a living, I'd want to be a teacher. And if I was going to be a teacher, I'd want to be a college teacher because that's when everyone's really hungry and willing to participate. I would definitely be the teacher that runs around the room and yells and screams and stands on desks.
I totally think we can already picture that.
Right. And so I wanted to utilize the book as a vehicle. The idea also about the book, it's called Breaking Out of Show Business, What I've Discovered by Not Being Discovered. And so I wanted it to not just be me. I wanted it to be a panel of other people that are unknowns, but are quote unquote successful, whatever that means. So if it is attached to entertainment, it could also be entrepreneurial business studies. So there's the comedian, there's the PR person, there's the finance guy, so on and so forth. It's all kind of in the same industry, but many different areas. So it can relate to a bunch of different people, a publisher, things like that.
Yeah.
And we try to find, we book with universities or, corporate events and things like that. And we find local panelists so it can relate to the area, to the region. And they read my book and they decide if there's a chapter that they feel is very applicable, which usually when they're in a different industry, they find that fascinating. They're like, I know about that. That happened to me,
Yeah.
So, and so we do a panel discussion. We have a moderator and we kind of talk about all the things you and I are talking about. We talk about the art of the business side of things, the art of the talk, how to disarm people, how to be the most you in your work, how to get out of your own way. And also the arc that every person, look, in this society, do I think we should all be working to barely pay our bills? No, I don't think that's why human beings are on this planet. But that's the society we live in. And because of that, we all go through the same process in our industries, whatever it is, restaurant, business, whatever. We have to figure out how to start. We have to climb the ladder. We have to get in. Then somewhere in the middle, we're feeling stagnant. We're frustrated. Then towards the end, how much longer do I want to do this? When is it time to stop? Do I need to do a different career? We all go through those questions. And so this panel discussion is about people who are very seasoned in whatever they do. And we discuss what we have learned in an applicable manner that can relate to the audience. So, and then we do a Q&A and, so on and so forth. So the book went to UCLA, it went to Yale, a couple of, like Samuel's bookshops, things like that. And we did do a test with Yale and now we're going to really launch it. We're talking to UNLV. We are ready to release an announcement for a deal with SAG-AFTRA Los Angeles so the industry can come participate. And but I'd love it for, we really want it for the universities. I have been called by a couple of, corporate bookers, whether it be, I don't know, community centers or synagogues or whatever that is.
Sure.
And really this is not just applicable to students because, as I said, I'm 45 and I'm still figuring it out. So, but I think having the template of show business around it, or at least part of the story, I mean, in this tabloidal society, people always want to hear juicy, fun stories. So I think that makes it a little lighthearted and interesting, around something that is that everyone stresses about because we all have to work.
How does this, like in reverse, for you doing this, we know what it would do for others, but how does this like feed your soul or feed your journey now?
Well, for the record, I'm not really making money off the books. I just want to break even. I really just want to. My goal is to relieve people of the stress and anguish and shame and guilt and panic that we give ourselves based on running through our lives. The truth of the matter is, no one's keeping score. I mean, of course, people have children and things like that, but at least the first couple of years, or or even the middle of your life, no one's keeping score but you.
Yeah.
And you can go back and try your business or your invention as many times as you want. It's good. There's no right or wrong as far as I'm concerned. It's really good, better, best. And in the end, when I die, no one's going to give a damn about the stuff that I was upset or felt wronged about or lacking in or whatever. So I have to keep although there's things that I want, I'm trying my very, very best again to participate without an agenda and not have judgment about where I'm at, so I can really be present today. My mom called me this morning. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I have a great view of the Hollywood Hills. I'm having a cup of coffee. I just tried this new cup of coffee." And she had said to me a long time ago, she goes, "You're chasing and racing, and the truth is, that's all life really is. It's a nice cup of coffee and a view." And at first I thought, "Oh my God, is that all there is?"
Right.
That is depressing. And then I realized it really let me off the hook. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And I love that that's what you're trying to give others.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's so important. It's true. We are all chasing something, and we all have dreams and things we want to try. But in the end of it, nobody's keeping score. And if they are, it doesn't matter.
That's right. And the dreams you want to try, I mean, you don't have to have a goal. I mean, you don't have to have an expected finished result. Do your dreams because you want to participate in the experience. I mean, how many people do you know, including yourself, where you're going to move to a different city or you're going to try a different industry, or you're going to try and work out differently. And then when you're in the middle of the change, which is uncomfortable, you're doing the old thing into the new thing. And in the middle of it, you feel like a loser. You're like, "I suck."
Totally.
Well, why are you vilifying yourself in the middle of the work it takes to get to that you set this up yourself?
It's just that uncomfortable thing that we have, set ourselves up for.
And there's no knowing when you're going to get there. That's the other problem.
Oh, absolutely.
So, I mean, look, you have to have a little bit of sense of self where you're like, okay, it's been 5 years and I've been out of work. I mean, you got to have a little reality check here and there. But for the most, just so you're handling your life, of course, responsibly. But at the same time, this is your experience. You are entitled to that process, whatever that happens to be.
How do you look at your life now? Like now that obviously you haven't retired out of the industry, you're doing something else and you're doing more. But
what I retired was the mindset. I think I had mentioned. But yeah.
So if you look back, because before it was all these small jobs, they didn't add up to everything that you were looking for, and you've retired that mindset. Do you look at yourself a little bit more like it's a new journey, it's a new way of life, it's a new or what? Well,
yes, there's two things. One, I'm having more fun. Number two, I feel more calm. Like I haven't felt this kind of peace, I don't know if ever, maybe. But the other
That's
thing,
huge.
Huge, because if you know me, I am a wound up guy. But
I can tell. I knew that when we first talked.
Yeah, I mean, it's
that's
also
part of your energy. It's great.
It is. It can be positive as well. I think that I lost my train of thought. I think that I'll give you an example. Like this week, this was my week. Monday, I did special effects on the Back to the Future DeLorean car for a new commercial.
Oh.
That was fun. I was the only one allowed to be in the car, and it was flying. They put it on a crane, and it was flying through downtown LA. So that was awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
The next day, I was production managing a concert that was with Chris Christopherson and Johnny Depp and all these other people, and it was shot live, and it was very exciting and, of course, very stressful. Then the next day I was at the world-famous Beverly Hilton, and I was directing the Big Brothers charity gala, and today I'm writing for a comedian that has an ABC pilot. Mm-hmm. So to me, my paychecks come from everywhere, but my life is pretty fun. I mean, again, there are problems. I'm working for myself, so sometimes you're juggling the money, and that's just how it works. I used to have a real issue about like I said, why am I still doing most of the work myself, or why am I not further along? But I don't really care about that anymore. I really don't. And it is my hope, while again I try to participate without an agenda or a result, it is my hope that over this last year of finally participating in this way, that it will open up the other areas of my life that I would like for myself. I'd like to, be in love at least one more time before I die.
Sometimes I like to ask this question, and I think you're a perfect person for it. What's a piece of advice you would tell someone feeling, a little frustrated or lost late in their life? Like kind of where you were, because you've lived it, and not
Right.
everybody's going to write a book. But like, what's something you would say? Stop and do this.
I would say that they should ask themselves a series of questions. First of all, not looking at anyone else's timeline, not listening to your mom whispering in your ear. What do you like about your life right now, and what don't you like about your life right now? Number one. Number two, I would probably tell them that you're making yourself feel bad about where you're at in your life, and there's nothing wrong with where you're at in your life. Number three, it probably make you feel better to know that everybody feels that way, whether you know it or not, or whether they tell you or not. So you're right on schedule. Congratulations. And that this is your life, and you can really do whatever you want, and but you need a little fun in your life. And I'm not talking about spending money. I'm talking about making some life changes to feed you in a manner that is not currently feeding you, which will again then demagnetize the other things that you do. Look, we all have to work. That's why they call it work, because we don't necessarily enjoy it. So, it's your responsibility to balance your life in a manner that gives you some spiritual internal fulfillment. And if you can do that even once a week, that will, open everything else up and make you a happier person. You deserve it. You really deserve it.
Oh, I love that you ended it with that. It's really true. It's like, don't stop beating yourself up so much. It's harder to do than actually say it.
Right, and you're not broken. Everyone thinks they're broken. You're not broken. You're just you. There is zero judgment about who you are, and you got to stop thinking of yourself as broken. This is just how you're made up. There are positives, and there are things that take a little more effort to maneuver, and there's nothing wrong with that at all.
It's true. Just be yourself, which is harder, to really do.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, Michael. I love that you come from such a good place, and it's positive. Obviously, there's always things for us to work on, but I really love what you're doing and what you're saying.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if people want to follow along or, learn more about the book or see what you're doing, first of all, I'd probably say your Instagram is great for all those places you mentioned, by the way, because I've seen that. But where should people follow you online?
Well, my website is Michael. If you want to see all the careers, my website is michaelpaulonline.com. Social media are all Michael Paul Online. My Facebook is, my Instagram is. I couldn't get that on Twitter, so it's Michael Paul Live. And if you want to know about the book and the reviews of the book and about the roundtable, instead of the book is Breaking Out of Show Business, which is also on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. There's an ebook available as well. But if you want to know about the roundtable, which is called Breaking In, it's breakinginroundtable.com.
Yeah, and we'll list all of that in the show notes, and it'll be on our website on accidentalinformation.com. We'll definitely get that out, because I actually can't wait to see a little bit more of that. I hope at some point you guys even maybe record it or show us snippets of it.
We are going to shoot the SAG-AFTRA one.
That'll be really interesting. And because I can't wait to share that with some friends when it's time.
Great.
Well, Michael, again, this has been really great. I had such a great time getting to know you and listening to this story. So, yeah, we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you for listening to the show this week. What'd you think? Great story? Any new ideas? If you're new to the show, subscribe to receive a new episode each week automatically. And if you love the show and you want to help us out, go tell a friend about it. Then go write us a quick review on iTunes. Both of these favors really help us get the word out. If you want to follow along with me and see behind the scenes fun and more, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter at @MeChristopher. That's MECHRISTOPHER. To get even more inspiration and updates, follow Accidental Information on Instagram and Facebook at Accidental Information, and on Twitter at Accidental Info. We also post original articles about following your passions and getting creative, and more information about each episode at accidentalinformation.com. Thanks for joining me this week. Now let's keep chatting online, and then I will talk to you again next week.